It's so great.
I tell people all the time that we're practically related.
Yes.
So my name is Jerry. I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Jerry.
My sobriety date is October 27, 2006. My home group is the Unity Group, which meets in Mount Lake Terrace every day at 7 a.m. Online and in person. We have two separate meetings, but we're reading the literature together. And I do something for Alcoholics Anonymous every day. Most of my sobriety, I've gone to a meeting every day and done service. But right now I'm in that incredible life that Alcoholics Anonymous gives us, and my wife and I get to take care of my 2.5-year-old grandson most days, and that's he comes over about 7:30, so I miss a couple of days a week. But so let's see. I am the secretary for Area 72. I was the CPC chair. I've been a DCM, an alt DCM, the secretary of the district, GSR, and alt GSR. As I'll tell you later, it's changed my life. You know, where I got sober, I heard all the times that general service was politics, and I had that attitude when I started, and that's bullshit. It's people who love AA. Whoops, damn it. I'm not supposed to swear.
That's only 2 minutes in.
Yeah, it changes your life because you get yourself surrounded by people who love Alcoholics Anonymous. So I started drinking at an early age. I'm the product of 2 alcoholics families marrying, having lots of kids who are alcoholics. My dad and his buddies and my uncles, they would go out and they'd hunt and fish and they'd do all this stuff, but really it was just about drinking. And so you could always drink a little bit with them. They would let you have a sip or have a drink. But the first time I got drunk, I was in 6th grade. A guy named Rick stole a bottle from his dad. Rick, Scott, and I got drunk. Those 2 guys stayed part of my life forever. One of them died not too long ago from the disease. The other one is still running. But that bond of it was never broken. So I blacked out. I didn't remember a thing about it. And Scott came to me the next morning and said, "Man, you really hit that bottle hard." And I don't know if it's because I'm a guy or because it's me. I just smiled and said, "Yeah." I didn't say what happened, what I do, nothing. I pretend like I know what's going on, regardless of the situation. And that's how I drank ever since. I blacked out constantly. I'm a threat to society. By the time when I was 16, I crashed my first car, or my mom's car, really. And she got a call from the hospital. And she said, "No, that's not my son. He's asleep in his bedroom." What we would do is push our cars out of the driveway and take off and race all around town while we were drinking. And I ended up getting 28 stitches in the back of my neck. I had a guide wire and a telephone pole, and the ceiling came down and cut my neck. And I walked up to another friend's house, knocked on the door, and his mom answered it and said, "We need to call the ambulance." I didn't really even know I was hurt, but I had all this blood running down my coat. By the time I graduated from high school, I had a wet negligent, a wet reckless, a physical control. I didn't get my first driving under the influence until I got to college. And so I constantly was in the judicial system. When I was 19, I got the DUI, and the judge was tired of me and said, "You're going to have to go to treatment. You're going to have to join AA." I went a deferred. You're going to have to stay sober for 2 years. And I said, yes, although I knew I was never going to do that. I believed I was smart enough to outsmart the system. On my 21st birthday, which was less than 2 years later, my roommates gave me a half gallon of Cuervo, and 2 of us got arrested that night. I was one of the 2. And this time, the judge gave me 30 days in jail. Now, the whole time this is happening, by a freak of nature, I'm really good at school. So I am going to be the first kid in my family to graduate from college. I'm in jail on graduation. The judge lets me out for the afternoon.
Oh
So my
goodness.
parents can watch me get my diploma and then puts me back in jail afterwards. Now, at that point in my life, I believed I was done drinking. I'd gotten back into AA, and this time I was serious about it. I became evangelical about it. You know, I'm on a college campus. I was going to school at WSU, where there's a lot of drinking. But there was also a really great AA meeting. But it was all college kids and one really old guy who was like 35. And he was everything, right? He was everything, at least to me. He was the major part of the reason that I was able to stay sober and think that I could have a sober life. Because of this man and the way that he could explain what Alcoholics Anonymous was all about, and the way that he could explain what alcoholism was. I thought I would be sober the rest of my life. I ended up going back to school, getting married, starting a business, doing all this stuff. And I have told people that I got sober, but that's not really the truth as I understand it today. I stopped drinking, right? And then I would make rules like, I'm only going to smoke pot if somebody else brings it. I'm not going to buy it. That's my rule. And then pretty soon I started thinking, boy, that's really selfish of me not to buy my share. I should be buying some too. And then, you know, I started using other drugs. And then what happened is my friend Randy, who I went to a lot of meetings with here in Seattle, I stopped going to meetings, and he called me up and he said, do you think you don't need to go to meetings anymore? And I said, I don't need to go to meetings anymore. I've got this. And I stayed sober, again, sober qualified, right? It's not what I consider sober today, but it's what I considered sober because somehow I had decided that drinking was my problem. Not my thinking, but my drinking. And so I'm going along and I'm totally insane, right? I get up early, I go to work, I come home, I make my kids breakfast, they go to school, I go back to work, I pick them up in the afternoon, I go back to work when they go to bed. It's just constant, and I'm, you know, at all their field trips, I'm coaching their sports, I'm doing all this stuff. I'm just super busy, staying sober, but you know, not what I understand sobriety to be today. And so my daughter's in high school, my son's in junior high, they don't want dad around anymore. And I think to myself, you know what? I was really young when I quit drinking. I bet I could start drinking again. And so I go into a Mexican restaurant. It's right above the place where I exercise, and I have dinner and I have a bottle of beer. And I walk out that door and the worst thing possible happens. Nothing. You know, I didn't burst into flames. I didn't get arrested, and it's on. You know, within 4 years, I'm drinking the way that I like to drink, which means every day. Um, I am so sick that now, when everybody's in bed, I'm climbing out the window of my house, pushing my car out the driveway, just like I did when I was 16, except now I'm 46. And I'm driving to the bar where I'm going to drink until the drug dealer comes. And then I'm going to drink some more. Then I'm going to sneak back into my house. I'm going to lay down on the couch and pretend like I've been there all night. And of course, I don't know why I'm pretending this, because everybody knows I'm drinking, right? And they're telling me, you've got to stop drinking. You've got to stop drinking. And I'm thinking to myself, don't tell me what to do. You know, I'm making money. I'm paying my bills. I'm an adult. I can do what I want. Quit trying to run my life. And you know, I have that, what I call the divided mind, where on the one hand, I want desperately to stop because I know what's going on, right? But on the other part of my brain, I know I can't stop. And I hate myself, right? So what finally happens is I get to the point where my wife has given me divorce papers. You know, when I met my wife when I was 19, and it was that miracle that happens when you see someone and you meet them and your whole brain explodes, right? She's super. She's a great person. And she's divorcing me, and I'm thinking she's the problem, right? My daughter let me go with her and my wife to Eastern Washington so she could go to college. And she said, Dad, you can come if you promise not to drink, right? And so what do? I hide bottles in my luggage. I stay at a hotel that has a bar. And I go down to the guy at the bar and I say, I'm going to be coming in here from time to time and I'm going to need a shot of vodka. And I'll catch up with you at the end of the day, right? And I give him $20. And that's how I'm living my life. I cannot not drink, no matter what. You know, when my daughter was born, I would tell people that that's the day my heart grew. And here she is telling me, you have to stop drinking or you can't see me anymore. And I'm thinking to myself, why don't you ask me to stop breathing? Because it's the same thing. I'm not drinking because I want to drink. I'm drinking because I don't have any choice. And my son has already stopped talking to me. He didn't talk to me through basically like 8 years. You know, his 3 years of high school, he didn't talk to me because I was such a liar, right? The whole time I'm doing this, I'm telling him how to live his life. My daughter is now estranged from me. My wife is divorcing me. And my wife and I work together. And so she's, oh man, I think the book says something like, how do we find these women? I don't know. But she's giving me one more last chance, right? Where she has said, you can take me out on Friday night if you don't drink. And I say, okay, we'll go out at such and such a time after work. And at about 3 o'clock, I haven't drank all day. And you guys know what that itching is like in your body, where every cell is just irritating the hell out of you, and you have to have a drink. And I say to her, hey, I got to run to the store and get some office supplies. And she just looks at me and says, okay. And so I go to, there's an office supply store, and right next to it is a Mexican restaurant that when my wife would go into the office supply store, I would run into the Mexican restaurant and have a couple of shots. And I'm sitting there in that parking lot, and I'm thinking to myself, I have one last chance. If I go in there There's no point going home, right? And I sit there and I have that argument with myself, and I pull out of that parking lot and I start driving towards home. And the next thing I know, my car is pulled into a 7-Eleven. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, I can probably go in there, get one of those big cans, drink it, and she won't know. And I think, and I think, and I think, and oh God, I should tell you, by now I'm batshit crazy. Seriously batshit crazy. I have taped pictures of my kids to the dashboard of my car, thinking that that will stop me from drinking. I have a St. Christopher hanging from my mirror. I have taped a picture of the Virgin Mary on my car. I have a worry stone, right? I've got all these devices, and I will sit in front of the liquor store and pray, God, don't let me go in there. Don't let me go in there. Don't let me go in there. So I'm doing this in front of the 7-Eleven. And I pull out. I think, okay. And I start, I make it about another block and I pull into another bar. And I think to myself, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go in there and I'm going to have one drink. And that's going to prove that I'm not an alcoholic. So I go into the bar, I order a shot of vodka and a beer, because that's what I call one drink. And I drink it and I leave. And I get in my car and I think to myself, see? So I stop at the next bar I come to, because I have just proved I can control my drinking. And my phone starts ringing and ringing and ringing. And I just shut it off. What the fuck? Whoops, damn it. And I'm driving home and I get in an accident and I hurt another person and I wake up in the hospital with stitches in my head and police standing by my bed, right? And I can tell you that accident is not my fault, but that's a lie, right? In a court of law, there's some intervening circumstances that mean that accident wasn't my fault. But the truth is, if I hadn't been drinking, I wouldn't have been there. I would have reacted differently. And I should have had that a million times. I'm not one of those people who doesn't drink and drive. I'm one of those people who drinks in my car every day. And every day I've got an open container in my car. And every day I'm drunk. So it was way, way, way overdue, right? My wife lets me come home, and so I detox for like 3 days in a separate bedroom, because we're not in the same bedroom for a long time now. And after about 3 days, she opens up the door and she says, why don't you try AA again? It worked for you before. And it was like, fuck. Why didn't I think of that? I never thought of AA. It was unbelievable, because you hear people say it ruins your drinking. It doesn't ruin your drinking. If you're me, you never even think about it. You're living the life you're supposed to lead, right? You put your kids, your family, your wife, your job, everything on one side of the scale, and you put alcohol on the other side of the scale, and it's no contest. You drink every day. And so I went to a meeting. I went to TUG, 7 a.m. because I'm so screwed up, I'm still thinking to myself, I got to go to a meeting early so I can get to work. That's why I chose that meeting. I got to get my slip signed. I got to get to work. And I got there, and the people who were there saved my life. And saved my life is not even an accurate description, right? they taught me a new way of living that I don't know if I was too young or too stupid or both, but they taught me a brand new way of living, and they taught it to me right away. They told me that if you drink every day, you've got to go to a meeting every day. And I told them, you don't understand. I'm important. I'm busy. I've got stuff to do. And they said, you had time to drink every day, right? I said, yeah. And then they told me that I had to get down on my knees and I had to ask God to remove my obsession with alcohol. And I'm not an idiot. I knew that wasn't going to work, right? I had tried a million times to get God to stop me from drinking. It had never worked. But I was desperate, and so I went home and I did that. And I've done that every day since. I've done both those things every day since. And that's why I'm sober today, right? And it's not the actual act. It's following instructions. That's the key. Because I don't follow instructions. If you come up to me and say, hey, you've got a flat tire, would you like help? I say no. I don't want help. I can fix it myself. And so that's what I was talking about with Terry. And, he jumped right in, but for me, it's different. For me, it's like I had to have somebody sit down by me and take me to the spiritual experience in the back of the book and say, you've already had a spiritual experience. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, you didn't drink yesterday, right? That means you've had a spiritual experience because you could not go a day without drinking. Now you can. So now you have to work on hanging on to it. And I got a sponsor, and it was one of those deals. This is how I am. I have left the meeting and I'm thinking to myself, you got to ask somebody to be your sponsor. You've got to ask someone to be your sponsor. If you don't, you're in trouble. And I start walking back, walk back to my car, walk back to my car. I go in and I ask the guy, will you be my sponsor? And he probably saved my life because he didn't say, yes, that'd be great. He said, gosh, meet me at Denny's on Saturday and we'll sit down and talk about it. And every time I would ask this man a question, he would just start laughing. And he would say, I can remember when I used to feel like that, or I can remember when I used to think like that. And if I asked him the question long enough, he would give me some direction. And by then I would follow it. But if he had given me an answer, I wouldn't have been able to follow it. Because you're not the boss of me. Don't tell me what to do. Even when I'm asking, I can figure out a better way. And so, I'm getting maybe a step a year, right? I'm just hung up on step 3. I can't possibly do it. And some guy comes into my home group and he sits down beside me and we go through the meeting and he says, how are you doing? And I say, I'm really struggling on step 3. And he says, listen, why don't you read the 3rd step prayer every day for 30 days and see how that works? And I did it. And I've been doing that every day since too, right? It's not that they're telling us things that are hard to do. It's that if you are me, the idea that I can't figure it out for myself is a very difficult idea. It's almost a killer for me because I don't want to do it. And so I eventually make some progress, go through the steps, do it. When I get to my 4th step, I don't tell the guy everything, right? Or my 5th step because I like the guy. I admire him. I don't want to tell him what a shithead I am. And so my life is getting better, right? This is a results program. My life is getting better. I think I'm doing great. At about year 9, We had a woman in our home group named Nurse Peg. She got sober 90 days later than me, so we were littermates. And she came up to me and she said, hey, I want you to come to the District 24 meeting today and fill in for our secretary. She hasn't been there, or she's not going to make it tonight. I said, okay, I'll do it, because she was a great friend of mine. I had never had a friend who was a woman before. So this is a special woman, right? The first time I ever told a woman the truth was two pegs driving over to Wapato to hear Clancy talk. Right? I just, yeah. So I say, okay, I'll show up. I show up and she says, the woman hasn't been here for the last several months. We want you to be secretary. Will you do it? And I said, yes, because I loved her, right? And I loved what she had. She's one of those people like Terry that just gets right in there and just immediately gets on fire and starts doing service and builds her whole life around AA. And so that happened to me. And at the same time, the elder in our group came up to me and said, do you want me to take you back through the steps? And I surprised myself and said, yes. So year 9 and 10, I cried all the time because I remembered so many things that I didn't remember the first time through. But it was my biggest period of growth. And I did the exact same thing, almost. When I got to the 5th step, there was one thing I wasn't going to tell my sponsor. We go through my inventory. He says, is there anything else you want to tell me? And I said, no. He says, okay. And then I said, wait, there's one more thing. And I tell him. And he says, yeah, that happened to me too. Right? The one thing I could never tell anybody. It's just, this program is just unbelievable, right? I can't even tell myself the truth about me, but somehow I'm able to tell some other man the truth about me. And so those two things happened to me in year 9 and 10. And I have stayed heavily invested in service. So what I believe for me is I'm either moving into the middle or I'm moving back out. And I can't afford to move back out, right? Here's what my life is like today. I live in the same house. It looks much crappier because when I was drinking, I was hiding in the yard. I had bottles hidden around. I had pipes hidden around. So I was always out there working on my yard. And now whenever my wife and I drive around and I see a really nice yard, I say, that guy's an alcoholic. But the inside of my house is completely different. My son who didn't talk to me, that's whose that's whose son that my wife and I get to watch. My wife and I have the best relationship we've ever had. I was at dinner with a bunch of our old friends. The two of us were. I only go out with my old friends with my wife anymore. I don't trust myself still after 17 years. And one of them comes up to me after the dinner and said, what's going on with Rhonda? She seems really happy. And I said, I stopped being an asshole. It's amazing. You know, there's that story, acceptance is the answer. It says that when you focus on your partner's good qualities, they grow. When you focus on their negative qualities, they grow. And I really am an asshole. I thought marriage was a competition, and it was my job to be winning. So even though I'm acting like a total loser, I'm magnifying my wife's defects so that I can say that she's the problem. And that's exactly what I said when I got to AA. I said, my real problem is my wife doesn't know how to load the dishwasher right. And I thought it was true. And the guys that I was talking to, they stood up and called other people over to listen to me. So they could have a good laugh too. You know, it's just amazing how wrong I was about everything. And so everything I do today, everything I think today, every way I act is how I learned in Alcoholics Anonymous, because I don't know how to be a human being, right? I only know competition, or did. I didn't. The book says something about how to be a partner. Oh, I must be done. Okay, I'm done. Thank you.